Hi, my name is Nathaniel, and the title of this talk is 0 to 100 Real Quick, inspired by a Drake lyric from the song. I really like it. A little bit about myself. I am a developer evangelist at a company called Twilio, and I'm brand new at this company. I only started 3 months ago, and I'm going to talk about the experience that I had when I started. So when I started, I really wanted to be successful, all right? I'm pretty sure everyone here wants to have a successful career, and I'm like that as well. And as I started, I began to look out for sort of books and other talks and lots of sources of information about how I can be successful in my job. And this talk is really sort of an amalgamation of all the knowledge that I've gathered over the course of my time here. I'm also going to share these slides online. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tweet a link to the slides, and that's an excuse to tell you to follow me at chatterboxcoder on Twitter and on Instagram. But let's get on. So I read a quote in a book by Michael D. Watkins called The First 90 Days. And it says that every successful career is a series of successful assignments. And every successful assignment is launched with a successful transition. Now, when I was outside, I was talking to someone and my talk topic came up, and when I said, oh, my talk is about your first 100 days in your first tech job, they were like, oh, I've missed it. But this isn't just about your first job, this is about every single transition that your career will be made up of, whether you're changing companies or changing roles. And I'm going to tell you about a timeline. Now, this is my timeline of how it was when I started at Twilio. And it may not reflect your experience. You may look at this timeline and when I go through it and say, well, the things he's talking about, I did that much quicker, or it took me a lot longer of time. And that's a very personal experience. But in my opinion, there are 3 phases that we all go through every time we transition into a new job. And these 3 phases are observing, understanding, and creating. And I'm going to talk to you about some strategies that I've sort of developed and learned on how I'm able to do these 3 things successfully in order to really start my transition in my new job. Well, I hope I've done it well. So day 0, you've got the job, and you'll probably be feeling a little like this. Really excited and really happy. And you may feel 3 sort of categories of feelings, 3 things really. And that is excitement. This is good, you've earned it. Be proud of yourself, you deserve this job. And you might also feel a bit nervous, but don't doubt yourself. You deserve to be there. They hired you because they knew that you had the skills to do this job successfully. I listened to a talk by someone called Jo Franchetti in London, and she always says that if anytime you think you're not good enough, do you really think you're smart enough to trick all of these smart people into thinking that you're better than you actually are? And another thing is, be ready for support. Lots of people around you are going to support you. Now for me, I remember when I tweeted about my new job, and it got retweeted by the CEO of the company I work at, and my follower account went right up. But it's not really about the Twitter followers. All your friends and family who have supported you on this journey, the people who you were colleagues with in your coding bootcamp, or maybe the lecturer at university who you spoke to about your career choices, those people are all rooting for you. Celebrate with them as well. So, day 1, we finally reach our first day, and your office may look a bit like this. Celebrations, lots of handshakes, and lots of new names to remember. I'm really bad with names, so I struggle sometimes and have to write it down sometimes. But being new can sometimes really suck. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Now, I listened to a talk, it was also called The First 90 Days, by a gentleman named Arnon Kraft. Now, Arnon Kraft actually grew up and started his career in Tel Aviv. But then he was going to move to the United States for a new role. And he was really excited, his wife was really excited, their careers were moving up, and they were going to live in a nice house. But their son was not excited. And he sat down and spoke to his son and tried to really get to the bottom of why his son didn't want to move. And he sort of categorized these things into three points. His son said, everybody knows who I am. At school, I have loads of friends, and I'm really popular. And I might lose this when I go to this new place. Also, I know how to be successful. I know where to go to give in my homework. I know which teachers are strict and which ones I can whisper a little bit in the class in. And most importantly to his son at the time, I know what's cool. I know what trainers to wear. I know that having my hair long is cool. And maybe when I go to this new environment, they might think I'm not cool. Now, this might seem really childish, but as some of you may notice, it's still kind of reflective of how we feel today. But Arlen came up with a couple other words which I really like. Reputation. Where you've been in your university or in the coding bootcamp you are, or your old job, you had a reputation. People knew who you were and that you were good at what you did. And it's quite nice to have that reputation. And sometimes it can be intimidating, feeling like you're going to go to a new place and that reputation might disappear. Also, commitments and purpose. You knew what you had to do and how to do it to be successful where you've been. And you have been successful. And sometimes you may question, will I be able to do that in my new role? Will I still be able to make the right commitments and work towards the right purpose to be successful? And you may also be wondering about culture. What's the culture of this new place? Will I fit in? Will I belong? And I'm going to be talking through this talk about some of the things that helped me to feel more confident in my job and also to really get off to a flying start. So, day 7, it's my first week down, and for me, the first week was my onboarding training. So I finally got my laptop, I sort of learned about the company and how it works a little bit, and I sat down to do some work. And this is where I'd say you should begin the first of the 3 phases, observing. You need to gather as much information as you can. Observation is one of the most crucial parts of starting a new role. And there may be things that weren't on the onboarding training. What's the office culture like? What's the management style like? Who are the key partners, both internally and externally? And most importantly for me, what are the best office stacks? Observe and gather as much information as you can. Look as far and wide, inside and outside the company, for all the information that you can grab. And also avoid some transition traps. So there's some things that you might catch yourself doing, and make sure you try to avoid them. And this is sticking exclusively to what you know is one of them. Sometimes you carry what you had before, and that's great, don't get me wrong, and it helps you to get this role. But also be open to new learning experiences and new learning opportunities. Appreciate the things that you can learn in your new role. Falling prey to the action imperative. That's another trap that you want to avoid, where you feel like, I need to do everything. I need to be really successful from day 1. Your enthusiasm is great, but do not overcommit to an unsustainable goal. And only focusing on learning the technical part of the business. You may have heard on Twitter this year something called the 10x engineer. And like Heidi spoke about earlier, learning the business model of the company you work at and understanding the business value of your role is so important for you being successful in this role. Your tech adjacent skills are as important, and they really allow your technical skills to shine through in your new job. So these are the transition traps that you should avoid. And if you avoid them, then you will be successful in that first observation stage. But then also, here are some good practices that you should keep on doing. Negotiate success. Just like we've just learnt with the frameworks of feedback, focus on building a productive working relationship with your new manager. And that might mean scheduling regular meetings with him, or them, with them. And keep your balance. Being committed to your new job is great, but don't set an unsustainable goal that you won't be able to follow through with later on. So day 30, we're 1 month down, and we move to the next phase, understanding. So you've gathered all of this information, and now you need to do the mental maths. You need to do all the calculations and really gain a true understanding of the company you work at and what your role is and how you can bring value. But once again, there are some bad behaviors we need to avoid. Overplaying the I am still new card. Now you are new and your manager knows this and your colleagues know this, so don't feel like you need to be perfect. However, don't let being new stop you from learning new things, if you understand what I mean. So don't say, oh, I don't know how to do this, I'm brand new, can you do it for me? But rather, use it as an opportunity to learn something new. Over nostalgia. And that's where you're holding on to things that you've had before, which might have been great, but blinding yourself to new things that you can learn. And saying, oh, back in my day, in this place where I used to work at, we did it this way. And now sometimes that can be really useful to bring that into your new role, but also be open to looking at the value that is there and what is relevant to where you are now. And superhero syndrome is where you overpromise and underdeliver. Make sure you do not do that. Make sure you focus on being able to follow through on the commitments you make so that you can be successful. And hide and seek. This is when people, you see them on day one, they're really friendly, and then you never see them again. The social networking and the social capital that you gain in your job is really important to your career. So many people have stories about how the job that they got was from a friend that they met maybe when they worked way back when they started. So make sure you hold on to those relationships. So I'm just going to go back through them again. Overplaying the I'm still new card, over nostalgia, superhero syndrome, and hide and seek. But instead, here are some good practices you should be doing. Asking questions. Never be afraid to ask why. A funny thing that's happened to me is I've often been in meetings and they will use acronyms. Americans love acronyms, FBI, SLE, and I'm always lost. But oftentimes I'll put my hand up and say, what does that acronym mean? And they'll explain. And funny enough, there'll always be three or two people in the room who've worked there longer than me who didn't know what the acronym meant either. But always feel free to ask questions and ask why. And use the available resources, your manager's time and attention, also your colleagues as well. These are resources and they're free that you can really use to gain a better understanding of the company you work at, of the job you do, and become better at it. So now, day 60. This was for me, getting good at this. I was beginning to feel confident, quite proud of myself. And this is when you move on to my favorite phase, when you begin to create. It's your time to shine. You are ready to take ownership. Now, feel free to revisit observing and understanding if you need to, and continue to iterate to create new things. So at Twilio, the company I work at, one of our core values is called to draw the owl. And it comes from a meme that was popular back in 2010. The fact that people are laughing means some people have seen it before. And the way we interpret it is, there is no instruction book. It's ours to write. Figure it out, ship it, and iterate. Invent the future, but don't wing it, which is a bit of a balance. And one of my friends described it, and I really like the way he described it, is stop talking, just do it, right? And what will happen is as you create, and as you begin to draw the owl, you'll create value. Now, this is a very popular business model, the break-even point. And I've kind of changed this. I've taken away the timeline. And this is because not everybody follows the same amount of time to reach the break-even point. Some people, it may be really quick. And some people, especially in large companies with a variety of products and business processes, it might take them a bit more time. But what happened was your company needed you. And then they invested in you. They spent a lot of money trying to hire you, spent money on recruiters, they spent money paying someone to interview you. And you started the job. and you began to create value. And eventually you'll reach a point where the value you've created is equal or more than the value that they invested in you. Now, don't see this as just a goal and see it, a lot of people sometimes see it as a financial thing. They spent this much to train me and now I've added this much financial value to the company. Your value may not come in the shape that you thought it would. Your value might be to improve the office culture. Your value might be a new way of thinking that you brought to the table. See this as an opportunity. Take advantage of the value that you've consumed and use it to create value where you are. And day 100, for me, this is when you're in the groove and you want to keep it 100. You've built all this momentum and you want to keep it going. And I would say recheck your work-life balance. Make sure you make time for personal reflection outside of work, because your personal well-being is a key aspect to your life and it enables you to succeed just as much as your technology skills. Understanding your circumstances and where you come from is crucial to informing the right goals for yourself. You may find that your personal life begins to change as you've started your new role. I was actually listening to a talk by a colleague called Michelle, and she described a phenomenon known as a class straggler. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it. Now, a class straggler is someone who grew up in a blue-collar situation and now has a white-collar life. And I identify as a class straggler. And because of that, sometimes I feel like I don't quite fit in with many of my friends and family members, and I may feel uncomfortable with my middle-class lifestyle and posh office. And I may show up overdressed to interviews or act really formally in casual situations. Now, you may or may not be a class straggler, but what truly matters is understanding how your new job and the expectations that come with it affect your life. Recognizing how your experiences shape your understanding of the working life prepares you for some of the encounters that may come your way as you go on. Now, infinity and beyond, even I don't know. I only started at Twilio 99 days ago. I haven't reached day 100 yet myself. But just remember, it's a marathon. Your career is a marathon, not a sprint. But you can ensure a strong start. Just make sure that you are observing, gathering as much information as you can. Understand, never shy away from asking why. And create, go and draw the owl. And remember that every successful career is a series of successful assignments. And every successful assignment is launched with a successful transition. This may not be for your first tech job. This may be for a new role, or maybe you got that promotion, or maybe you're moving into a different company. You can use some of these strategies of observing, understanding, creating, avoiding those traps and bad behaviors to be the best in the new role that you've started. And thank you so much for listening. My name is Nathaniel. And if you want to keep up with my journey to 200 days, feel free to follow me on Twitter @chatterboxcoder.